Hey guys, what's going on? So I am here with a pretty neat bike, the Himiway Cruiser. It's kind of like imagine a bike that's like right in the middle as far as usage is concerned, with a little bit of accents on each of the main kind of uses. It's a little bit of off-road, it's a little bit of cruiser, it's a little bit of city bike, but it's a lot of fun. It's a very adaptable bike. But anyways, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So we're actually here on top of a dirt mound. I believe they're going to build a house here right in the middle of the Salt Lake Valley. I figured it'd actually be a pretty cool place to explore. I actually started down there on the river trail like usual, and then I saw that big hill and I thought, I'm gonna go up there. But anyways, it's kind of cool. You got to see the mountains all covered in snow. So that's along the entire Wasatch Front. If you're curious, that's what it's called. The other side of the mountain they humorously call the Wasatch Back. But anyways, got the snow-covered mountains. I think a storm is actually going to come in maybe later tonight, so we're going to sneak in some city riding on the Himiway Cruiser right now. So let's go ahead and jump into the specs, talk a little bit about the accessories, jump into the electric system, and then jump on the bike. So let's go. Okay, so the Himiway Cruiser is called a cruiser, but it has just a couple of cruiser accents along with anything else. I mean, it's just as much of a cruiser as much as it is a mountain bike, as much as it is a city bike. So it's kind of interesting they called it a cruiser because it could be called a variety of different things. So let's go ahead, as usual, start up at the front of the bike, right up here with the tires, because the tires do have a lot to do with kind of the direction of the bike. So it does have the 26x4 wide tires. So that's a pretty wide tire for off-road purposes, but you can also use it for comfort in this case. So it does have a fair amount of volume in the tires, and that actually lends to a lot of comfort. So it doesn't have a dual suspension, as you can see in the back area there. It does have a front suspension. So that's kind of nice. The front suspension kind of eases things up on the handlebars, and the tires themselves act as like a little bit of a suspension with all of that volume right in here. You can see the tread on the tires is also an off-road tread. That's how I was able to get up this hill a little easy, along with the motor, but we'll get to that. But an interesting point about these off-road tread is that these tires also have a reflective stripe along the edge. I like that a lot. It's a particularly useful feature for city riding, because when you're riding in the city, the cars passing by will have lights shining on you. Of course, well, hopefully, unless they're a phantom motorist. But in this case, you have a reflective stripe along the tire, both front and back, and that's actually a pretty cool thing. So yeah, you can already tell that by the tires, the direction of the bike is already kind of pointed out that it's an off-road bike with some city accents, or perhaps the other way around, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, also the rims are also fairly wide. They're 82.3 millimeters wide from end to end on these wheels. So that's actually pretty wide to accommodate the tire, of course. You got some pretty standard hub spacing, some 13 gauge spokes up front. So the front suspension actually has some girth to it. It's pretty wide because it has to accommodate the fat tires, of course. But also the stanchions are 32 millimeters wide from end to end. So you have a fair amount of space in there to do some damage, so to speak, when you're going up some curbs or something like that. So let's talk about the brakes a little bit. These are some 180 millimeter brakes. These are actually Tektro Aries, so it is a name brand of brake, but on the disc brake side, it's a little bit on the low end. You know, this bike can be programmed to go at a faster speed. I have it set for about 22 right now. If you're going to be on this bike going really heavy at a faster speed, definitely want to babysit these brakes, make sure that they're well maintained, because yeah, the 180 millimeter disc is nice, and the disc brakes are of course quite necessary for a bike of this size, but you don't want to go too long without fixing up these brakes. Because a heavy bike going really fast is going to wear through the brakes faster long term, so you'll definitely want to get that taken care of, either yourself or a bike shop. I actually like mechanical discs because I can fix them myself very easily. So, and you can too, actually. You know, I'll be motivating. You can do it. So you also have a little bit of a spot here for a front fender mount. I'm glad that I got out today because tomorrow I believe it's going to rain, and this bike does not have fenders. You can actually get fenders from the company, but they didn't come on the bike as a stock accessory. You do have a quick release up front, which is pretty nice. A little thing right there. Interestingly enough, there are some mounts right here for a front rack that mounts directly to the tubing right here, but that accessory is not available quite yet. Himiway is still a younger company. This is actually their first bike. So This accessory is not available, but it looks like it's pretty ready. You know, it looks like they got this part squared away. Some nice solid mounts there. I don't know if you could find something else to fit here into this little spot. They don't look terribly wide, about 40 millimeters wide, so there's not a whole lot of other accessories you could put there in its place, except for maybe something very simple. But nonetheless, these are here for a future purpose. So you do have a preload adjust and a lockout on the front fork. So yeah, definitely want to cover that there. We'll get to the light when we jump into the electric system, but let's talk about the cockpit area. You do have a display right here in the electric system. This is a phone mount. So I've got an old phone here. This is ye old phone I don't use too much anymore. But this phone mount actually came with the bike. This is not an added accessory in this case. They told me that it is included with every bike. So that's why I put it on here. Normally I wouldn't get it too deep into added accessories, but in this case it's actually stock with the bicycle. It is metal. It does mount into the bottom area of the handlebars there on the recessed portion. This is a Nexus 5 if you're curious. Fits in there, tighten it up. So it's pretty easy, pretty sturdy. I actually like the phone mount, but interestingly enough, as you can tell, I have the phone mount mounted here in this position, but that had to force the display out of the way. So if you want to use your phone for like GPS or something like that, that's cool. But be aware that your display is not going to be as easy to read because there's not a ton of real estate up on the handlebars. It is kind of a cruiser-esque handlebar in the sense that it has a rise here, but as far as space is concerned, there's really not a ton of space for stuff. You could get a couple of things, maybe a drink holder here and also the phone, but you got to push the display out of the way. You could probably attach a bell. It already has a bell, but you could attach a bell or something small like that if you wanted to. But yeah, these handlebars have that little cruiser-esque rise. I think it's a 70 millimeter rise from end to end. And also they're kind of wide. They're 650 millimeters wide. So it's not quite like riding a school bus where, you know, it dips in all the way, but it's just a little bit of a cruiser accent that kind of lends to that ease of riding. So that's the handlebar set right here. It's pretty comfy, I must say, to be able to grip onto here. These, of course, are the levers for the mechanical disc brakes. They do have a motor inhibitor, which is a good safety feature to stop the motor anytime that the brakes are pulled, so you're never fighting against it. Nice thing there. Built in with the left side brake is also a bell that is attached right in here. So if you wanted to, you could attach a bell if you want something that looks real pretty, matches something, but in this case, functionally you got a bell that's already included with it. The top tube does have a little bit of a slope, so it's not quite a mid-step, but a little bit of a step through, just a tiny bit. It doesn't come all the way across here and meet up to a higher point of the seat post tube. It does have a little bit of a bend, so you got a little bit of an easement there. This, of course, is the battery. We'll get to that point. So this is the 170 millimeter crank, fairly standard metal pedals right there. The front chainring is actually a 46 tooth chainring up on the front, and that comes back into the gears. So yeah, you do have the cassette back here, which is 14 on the low end up to 28 on the high end. That, of course, is being controlled by the Shimano Altus, which is right here. I like the Altus. I actually have a set on my personal bike that's an Altus. It's a good set. I like it a lot. Not terribly, like, I don't know if I do a whole lot of aggressive things with it, but it's pretty nice for easygoing riding, and for a cruiser makes perfect sense. Do have a derailleur guard over here, which normally I don't really like the derailleur guards, but in this case I use it to mount the bag, which is cool. I should talk a little bit about the indexer. This is the indexer, kind of standing over here to break the wind from getting on the microphone, but fairly simple. Press the button up, or press it in with your thumb to go higher, pull the lever back to go lower, and yeah, I think you know how that works. You're watching a bike video, so yeah. Brakes on the back are actually a mirrored set, the wheel and the tire as well, so nothing too exciting to talk about there. Let's get up into the seat and then we'll jump into the accessories, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So you got a fairly standard seat post here, nothing too crazy about that. The seat itself is about let's say 8 inches wide from end to end. It is kind of a little bit of a cruiser seat because it's wider, and it's also fairly comfy with some gel. It also has a handle back here if you wanted to pick up the bike and pull it around, you know, swing the back wheel around in the garage or something like that. So I think that about rounds up the mechanical system on the bike. So let's talk a little bit about the accessories. So the bike does include a fair amount of accessories. You got the front light, which is, I mean, kind of the electric system, and we'll get to that. You also have the phone mount, which, by the way, you can rotate. But this rack is also included with the bike. So this rack is actually 5.75 inches wide and 15.5 long. It does have this little tiny rail on here so that you can mount one of the more traditional bags. It has like a really tight hook. You can get it in there, or if you really wanted to, you can get something slim to fit on there. This wood deck can be removed, but this is a pretty cool accessory that comes with the bike. It has a nice little burned branding right here on the wood, which makes for a really handsome deck. And yeah, it mounts onto the spots onto the frame, which is nice. It doesn't strap onto any bolts or anything like that. So yeah, this is a pretty cool part about the accessory line, but wait, there is more. So this is actually my personal bag. This does not come with the bike. I've had this for some years, but I'll go ahead and put it here so that we can talk a little bit about some more accessories. And by the way, one thing I should mention about the rear rack is that there's not a whole lot of places to mount, I guess what I call like the little retention pin. So on a lot of bike bags, you'll see this little spot right here, this little clip, and it pulls on a little bungee so that you can tighten up the bottom so that it doesn't flop around when you're riding. In this case, there's not a whole lot of provisions for that. They don't have anything down here to hook onto the bottom of the bag. There's nothing down here. So in my case, what I did was I got a couple of S-hooks and I put them onto that derailleur guard. So normally, like I said, I don't really get into the derailleur guards. I think they're kind of silly, but in this case, it actually comes in handy pretty well because then I can mount the bottom of my bag to it. So let's go ahead and put the bag back onto the bike. Let's go ahead and open it up and I'll show you a couple of things. So I actually have a little bit of my own stuff. This is a bag of camera equipment. This is some extra gloves. And I'll kind of set that down so I can have some space to work. Library book. So in this case, here is the charger. This is actually a 2 amp charger, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a second. But the bike does, you know, manual of course, the bike does include some cool accessories with the bicycle itself. This is actually a 15-point multi-tool that has, I mean, you could use it for assembly if you wanted to, but this guy opens up into quite a few different tools. You got like a number 2, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 6 for the Allen wrenches, as well as a Phillips and a flathead, a couple of little sockets as well, and even a little tiny tool that opens up right here into changing the gauge of the, into a spoke wrench. So that's pretty neat, and it fits into a nice little package. This does come with a bike, which is kind of neat. I'll go ahead and fold that up, toss that back in, and check out something else, because I was really surprised. The bike also does include a floor pump let's go ahead and extend it a little bit. So here's a floor pump that you could use when you are assembling the bike, or I mean, suppose you could just take it with you. In this case, I got it in a bag, but yeah, that's pretty neat. Very rarely do I see a pump that includes it, especially a floor pump. And one last thing that was kind of interesting is some sunglasses. The bicycle came with sunglasses in this cute little case. Let's go ahead and open these up. I'm sure these are the finest quality sunglasses, I'm sure. Kind of losing everything to the wind, but that's okay. We can pick it up. But yeah, pretty neat. Yeah, sunglasses included with the bike. Fancy that. Fun stuff. There is like a little insert if you want to put in some prescription lenses or something like that, but pretty interesting. So let's go ahead and pack this back up. We'll talk about the electric system. I can feel the rain coming, so we better get moving. Let's go ahead and start at the very back of the bike. We actually have a cute little light that was included with the bicycle. So this is another one of those cool accessories. We'll actually go ahead and leave that on because we're going to need it when we hit the road. So also we have the 750 watt rear hub motor from a company called Lüanxing. So that's the motor there in the hub, so it kind of puts a little bit of the weight back, but you have a lot of weight up in the middle because this is a pretty honking battery pack. This is a 48 volt 17.5 amp hour battery that's mounted right here in the down tube. So that's pretty cool. The controller is down here. This is what we call an air-cooled controller that's exposed right there. So this battery is kind of neat because when you turn the key, it actually pops out from the side. Since I've only got one hand, I'm going to have to be on the other side of the bike to receive it, because since the bike is kind of tilted in this direction, twisting that key will pop the battery off. So be aware of that. But this is a pretty big battery pack, like I said, not only in capacity, but also just in sheer size. It's got a lot of girth to it. So yeah, we'll actually go ahead and mount that right back into position, and then we'll lock it in just by closing it. And there you go. And then here's the key. We're ready to rock. Let's go ahead and turn on the bike, and we'll kind of go through the display settings real quick. So on the display, it does have some Himiway branding on it. On the bottom, shows you your speed, also your pedal assist level on the top right, battery level on the top left. Pressing the remote attachment up or down will select your pedal assist level up to level 5. Interestingly enough, on this display, it actually doesn't go down to 0. It stops at number 1, so it's always on pedal assist. I think, I'm gonna make a judgment here, an assessment. I believe that this display has some programming that is not up to date. Since Himiway is a newer company, they do have some other things that they're working out. This is one of them, because I was reading through the manual and this display does not operate the way that the manual had outlined. And so things like this they're probably fixing, or maybe it's fixed by now with future iterations. But as it stands, it doesn't go into 0 pedal assist unless you just turn the whole bike off. But then at that point, it's not counting your speed or mileage, things like that. So be aware of that. Anyways, I usually have it cranked up to level 5 pedal assist because that's how I roll. Pressing the info button will cycle through a few metrics right here in the black part, from your ride time to a total odometer to average speed, max speed, things like that. You do have a button, a dedicated button right here to press once, and that will show you a little light indicator for the front light. So the front light does actually run off of the main battery pack, which is kind of nice. The rear light, as you saw, doesn't really have any wires or anything. It's just running on a couple of AAAs that are included with the light itself. So that's how you use the display. Nothing too amazing there. The pedal assist is a sealed cadence based pedal assist right down in here. So that's how that operates. There's one more thing I wanted to mention, and that was actually with the battery pack. So this battery pack is a 17.5 amp hour battery, and that is a big battery. That's going to go a long time. But in tandem with that, let's go open this up. In tandem with that, they have the charger. This is 1.5 pounds, so it's fairly light, but the battery charger itself is a 2 amp charger. So as a result, the total time, if you ride the bike until the battery is completely dead, which I wouldn't recommend if you can avoid it, but if you ride until the battery pack is dead, it's going to take you 8.75 hours to totally recharge the battery pack up to 100%. And like I said, hopefully that's a rare occurrence, that you don't completely deplete the battery all the way and then have to charge it all the way back up again and repeat that process. If that's the case, you're probably going to be looking at a different bike, maybe with 2 batteries, or possibly a different vehicle, I don't know. But as it stands, it would take a long time to recharge because that charger is not terribly strong. And for me, honestly, that's okay. I think that would fit my needs just fine. I'm okay with a slower charger because the slower going to harm the cells long term. So yeah, that's actually a pretty cool thing. So let's go ahead and jump on the bike, take it for a spin. Okay guys, let's do a little bit of off-road. We'll get through the neighborhood, back onto the trail, and kind of take it from there. I'm glad I came to this spot because it's a lot of fun. It's kind of steep, and that 750 watt motor could really do it. But I'm surprised. Of all the things that I talked about during the specification overview, I never mentioned the throttle. So right here on the right hand side, you got this twist throttle. Ooh, and there it goes. This is some pretty loose terrain that I'm in right now, and those fat tires are doing it just fine. So yeah, that throttle is what got me up the hill. Let's go ahead and twist that. Don't even need to pedal. And up and up and up we go. And this is how a little bit of pedaling. just a tiny bit. Okay, this is how I got up to this peak here for filming, is with that throttle. Da-da-da! All right, let's go ahead and turn it around. We'll take it to the house. Oh, don't want to go too far that way. All right. So yeah, we are packed up. We've got the everything back in the pannier bag on the back rack, and we got the fat tires going through the loose terrain, busting out that throttle, a little bit of pedaling. There we go. So this actually is a pretty good use for the Himiway Cruiser. It's pretty comfy, I would say, based on, you know, the riding position. I got the seat a little bit low, and the handlebars kind of come up, so yeah, that's kind of nice. A little bit of a comfort feel to it. I would say the grips are, you know, kind of a locking flat rubber, so there's nothing all that amazing about the grips, but that's a pretty easy thing to change. So if you wanted to, you could totally change that out if you wanted to make it even more of a cruiser. You could also get a suspension seat post if you wanted to, kind of doll it up a little bit, make it nice and comfy. Okay, so here we are back in the neighborhood area. You can see that this bike is very much like a multi-use bike. It's not too far in one direction. It's not super city. It's not like a super hunting bike kind of thing. Let's see, check my surroundings. And it's not all that cruiser-esque, but it is a little bit in every direction. So it's, yeah, like I said, it's pretty adaptable, I put it that way. You saw we climbed up that little steep hill where they got the construction going on. Right now we're in the neighborhood area. We're gonna take a left turn and get back on the trail, do a tiny bit of off-road along the river. And it can do all of this stuff just fine. I mean, it's not really a challenge for this bike. So the lack of a dual suspension, I wouldn't take this on like a super downhill path. That's not really what the bike would excel at. If you wanted to daily driver this thing, you totally could. I mean, that battery pack will get you going pretty far. You got the rear pannier or rear rack for the panniers that'll help carry stuff. So I'd say that in the city use, I would do it as a daily driver. I totally would. For off-road, you could do stuff like this. This is not terribly tough. You could do this all day, every day if you wanted to. I think that if you got into some serious off-road, that's where you'd start seeing the bike kind of not really shine when you get into the mega off-road, you know, downhill stuff. We can actually do a tiny bit of that if I ride long enough. I can get to a small little dirt bike trail that's up ahead, and you can kind of see a little bit of that. But honestly, stuff like this that we're doing right here, just like an equestrian trail or something, the bike does totally fine. You can totally do this. I got a lot of air in the tires too, so if we let out some air, it would be even more stable as we go through this. Here's some mud road like we're about to get onto, the paved trail right here. Bams. It could do the road just fine, a-okay. It could do a little bit of off-road just fine. It could do the city stuff just fine. It's pretty comfy, I would say, as a bicycle. Nice and easy going. That cadence-based pedal assist is pretty good for easy riding. Doesn't really require you to constantly put a bunch of force onto the pedals, so you could take it pretty easy. So yeah, I think this bike has a pretty wide appeal, and I'm sure that's on purpose, to have a nice wide appeal, because I want, as a startup company for Himiway, they probably want to get to as large of a customer base as possible. Let's go ahead under the bridge. Ooh, got to use those brakes. So I did slide out a little bit. My tail started to slide. Let's get a little more momentum and see if we can come to a screeching halt, see how that feels. I got the brakes pretty well dialed in, but this will be a good test because we're going about 23 miles an hour. So, okay, fishtail just a little bit on the slick pavement. Let's get up to speed again. See if we can fishtail a little more. It's kind of fun. Right before this turn. Okay. No, it wasn't so bad. I mean, that time I was a little more prepared. I kept my balance a little better. So if you know what you're doing, you know, it's not so bad. I definitely wouldn't recommend going 25 miles an hour, come to a screeching halt in the rain if, you know, if you're not comfortable with that kind of a thing. These, like I said, these brakes are fine when you babysit them, when you get them fixed and have them, you know, in tip-top shape. If you let them go for a while, if you let them go for, you know, 100 miles or a few months or something like that, then, you know, they're not going to have the same kind of stopping power they did on the first day that you had them fixed. So And you forget, you know, you do easy stops here and there, you prepare for it, because it's not all that fun to come to a screeching halt on a bicycle. But if you let it go and forget about it, and then one day you're in the city and then you have to do that screeching halt with some brakes that are not tuned up, then you could find yourself sliding a bit more than you want to. So yeah, that's my cautionary note. But this is fun. This is a really good terrain for the bicycle. Some nice loose gravel. Going over a little bit of half-inch jump there. Get some sick air, yo. But let's get to the dirt biking path, because I want to do that. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So here we go. Let's see what the Himiway can do when it's loaded with cargo and, all right, using that throttle, loaded with cargo and set for like 23 miles an hour, 24, and also at 30 pounds of pressure in these tires or something big. So it's definitely meant for city riding. So let's go ahead and go through here. Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, I think my tire pressure is really the biggest hurdle at this point. The throttle is good because I can goose on that throttle and get up the small spots without having to do too much. I would say it feels a little stiff because there's no dual suspension. Usually I do this trail with a dual suspension bike, so in this case it feels a little stiff. That seat is definitely comfy for sitting down. The seat is not all that padded, so it's not the most comfortable seat to be bouncing around on. Let's go ahead and go up this little, it's a little bit muddier than I'd like, but we can do it. A little bit of pedal power. All right, looks like the trail is a little unkempt right here, so we'll have to walk it. But overall, I think it's a lot of fun. All right, guys, so here we are checking out the rest of the bike in action. So here we got the battery, or at least a lot of the battery in the shot. We've also got the front chainring, 750 watt motor back there. Got a little bit of the bag too. So we're gonna be riding along in level 5 pedal assist, cranked up all the way. Let's go ahead. That picks up speed really quick. At first it's a little like a lot of cadence-based systems. At first you kind of get going and get your bearings for a couple of feet, and then all of a sudden, boom, it just rockets off. So yeah, level 5 is definitely powerful. Okay guys, of all places, we had a lot of fun driving the city-esque, cruiser-esque, mountain bike-esque Himiway Cruiser on a little dirt bike trail. So fun stuff. Thank you for watching the review of the Himiway Cruiser. If you want to check out some more electric bike reviews, go to ElectricBikeReview.com. We have the full written specifications for this bike, including all the heights, measurements, weights, as well as a big pro-con list. That's also at ElectricBikeReview.com. While you're there, you can also participate in the forums if there is an idea or a bike you'd like to pitch, or just hang out in the community. So thanks for watching, guys. Ride safe.